What's going on?
I
Where
don't
is
know.
everybody?
It is a new episode, at least. Stay this way. Don't change anything, Brett. This is Two Chaps, Many Cultures, and this is what you get in a virtual world. I don't know what he's looking at. I'm sure it's more exciting than looking at my face. Um, are
Well, I
you
can see
strang?
your face, but unfortunately, this choking thing's not working.
All right. Okay. I thought you were strangling me. Good. All right. I love it. Is that an Oculus Rift or what's that called?
It is Oculus, whatever it is. It's great. This is the virtual reality headset, I guess, produced by Facebook, essentially. And it's good for games, and it's really cool. It is actually really cool. I'm really enjoying it. So,
If you ever wondered which one of the two of us is the early adopter and the total tech geek, now you know. All right, I'm going to show this to my daughters who would call me that. However, maybe I've just been outgeeked a little bit. Ah, awesome. Welcome, everybody, to this Wednesday episode of Two Chaps, Many Cultures and Virtual. That is most of our reality right now. And yet I'm struggling with the term. Virtual sounds like it's not real. And I still feel that what we're doing here right now, this very moment, is in fact real. So is the word virtual perhaps a little bit misleading, or am I just giving it additional connotations that it doesn't really need?
Well, I think what did we use before this? Remote, right? People were the big dream from a lot of people who were saying, well, wouldn't it be great if I could just work from home? I mean, there's that dream. If I could work from home, I could work remotely. And obviously there were companies that were well ahead of the curve and said, you know, we want to have everybody co-located. We trust you. You're in your home. You can do your work, you know. And then the word virtual, I mean, it's used a lot more. It's just kind of something that said virtual. Now, of course, I think of this, right, when I think of virtual reality, something that's akin to, and don't get me wrong, this can be pretty real, right? But it's not real, but it's real enough for my 10-year-old to go, you know what, Daddy, I don't want to do that because it scares me. I mean, it is, some of this is really, so the technology is moving in that direction. There are also actual businesses that are building platforms for you to be able to do what we're talking about in terms of interactions with people around the world with these headsets. So, of course, as the price comes down and technology becomes more accessible for companies, no doubt they'll go that way. So I was in a demonstration with one of those platforms with these glasses the other day, and I found that there was absolutely zero consideration for anybody in the room and where they were from, because it's an avatar and nobody can see you. Unlike here, this is to me real but remote. But virtual is something where you don't see who the person is, the color of their skin, the country origins. Now, some people might say that kind of reduces bias, right? But it also it takes away the depth of the ability to understand, or at least inquire about who the person is in a deeper sense and what their cultural preference is. So, I mean, I just probably threw a lot of word stuff at people. To me, it made sense in my mind, but there seems to be very complicated aspects of this.
What I pick up from this is a clear distinction, and thank you for that. So virtual would be replacing this with another layer. Like, remember, some of you might be old enough to remember this. There was a platform called Second Life that you basically create an avatar world for yourself where you take on different persona, if you will, or where you're shape-shifting into another dimension. And remote, in our sense of the word, remote is what we're doing right now. We are remotely located in different time zones, and yet we're here simultaneously, and you can look at both of us, and we can look at each other. At least Brett and I can look at each other. We can't see you, by the way, if you're wondering, as you're watching this. Maybe we should invent something where we can see the people. So the reason why this came up was I've been getting a lot of these requests from our clients. Sometimes they're our direct customers, like corporate clients. Sometimes they're relocation management companies who handle much of the logistics and organization around moving people for work. And the question was, well, how do we justify your work? How do we justify cultural training? How do we justify coaching if our employees are not relocating physically? They're not changing their physical location because of the pandemic. And my answer, and I'm curious to hear yours, Brett, or anyone in the comments as you're watching this live or in the replay, I'm curious about your potential answer or questions around this. My answer is, well, that employee that you're currently not moving because of travel restriction, or there's other reasons why you choose not to relocate employee X from this point A to this point B, they're still going to interact with people from different cultures, right? The purpose for relocation was to bring your employee into another location where they do a certain task that they didn't do before in the previous location. So you're shifting that person into another environment with different norms, different behaviors, different attitudes, different ways of doing things. So you're going to have a cultural change for that person, regardless of whether you're going to move that person physically or not. So that's why we call it virtual or real. You're not moving that person for real. However, you're moving that person remotely. That person, that employee, and it might as well be you as you're watching this, you will find yourself interacting with coworkers, with clients, with suppliers, with an environment around you that is not the same as you are, who speak maybe a different language, who think differently, who have different belief systems, and have different ways of getting things done. So long-winded answer to say, it doesn't matter whether you change locations physically. If you're changing your work environment into another culture, that justifies cultural training and coaching. That was my answer. How would you respond to that, Brett?
Well, I think the coaching is an important part, because just today I had a communication from a client who I've been in touch with for close on 7 months, originally, who had a move in process and should have been actually in the US. And I had set a note to follow up with him at this time because I thought that he would have arrived. And then he said, actually, I didn't end up moving. I haven't been able to move. I'm still moving. The intention is still that I do that. But because of the current situation, I am now still doing my new job, but I'm doing it from my original location. But even the conversation that we had 7 months ago, we were already talking about anticipating, because he's got responsibilities for other countries. And he said in his email, what you said to me has really come home to roost. So I would like now to talk about specifically my situation in terms of what I've observed, what I've seen differently in terms of this, how I'm taking on this role, because it's completely foreign for him. The situation is foreign, but it's also foreign in terms of his interactions with his new colleagues. So that was impactful, I thought. Then it came back to us. Well, a lot more of our engagements are more coaching now. They're on, because it's such a dynamic situation. You have to change rather than say, we know what you're going into. We know that you're going to be living in this situation. We know that you're going to be working in this office. We know the measurables, and we can prepare you and train you for that. But this is an unknown situation. This calls for more coaching, and that calls for more talking about cultural interactions and styles and adapting to them.
And it also calls for helping people debrief or deconstruct behaviors that they're only experiencing remotely, right? So they're not in the physical space with the foreign culture colleague or customer. So now they're in their, say, virtual space. They're at least on a Zoom call or on some other Teams, WebEx. I don't know what platform you use. However, we still interact. It may be very limited. So I think it's even more important to have the tools and the knowledge to recognize what does body language in this frame that I can see. What does body language mean in this frame? I don't see the person shifting around with their legs, and I don't see the hand gestures as much as I would if we were in the same space. So how can I decipher the meaning that we share with each other, or how can I create my own meaning that I want to share with my team or my customers in a way that it lands, that in short term, how can I make my communication efficient in light of cultural differences, or maybe sometimes commonalities, but how can I be more efficient in relating to others in that remote divide that we're navigating? So we're adding actually another divide to the layer of culture. And I think this makes our work just as relevant, if not more relevant than it was before. So that pushback that I've been getting initially from clients, like, "Oh, we're not going to do that because we're not moving the person." So, well, good luck. Let's see how that works out for you. As I tend to say when I'm really cantankerous, then I say, well, tissues are me. Good luck.
What is it? Tissues are a what?
Tissues are on me. I take care of your tissue because you'll be crying a little bit. So, hey,
yeah.
And then you come back and then we'll talk.
No worries. Well, that probably takes a little bit of building rapport and relationship with,
of course,
to be able to say that with a client.
I'm not always that cocky, but it's I mean, what it boils down to is this: when people think I don't need to do this because it's not relevant, then okay, I respect that. I appreciate that this is your position, and I'm generally saying, hey, best of luck to your endeavors. However, I've seen this movie unfold before. I've read through that book. I know that story. So I cannot predict your outcomes. However, I can foresee that there will be some challenges along the way that you may not be aware of yet. Because, as I said, I've been through this a couple of times before, if not dozens or hundreds. So that's why I would say, well, yes, Godspeed, and then let's talk whenever you hit the first roadblock. Then I won't tell you I told you so. However, I'll welcome you with open arms, and we'll see how we can salvage the situation.
Absolutely. There have been, probably related to it, but you mentioned a new divide, right? A digital divide, an accessibility with technology, and I'm assuming you're talking about technology, right?
Right.
It has been a learning curve that to see and watch different platforms, as you said, as I put this up, this is just another one of my little shiny penny stuff that I follow in terms of technology. But I've been exposed to all kinds of different platforms. You have too, the WebEx and Microsoft Teams and Skype. Does anybody use Skype anymore? I don't know whether that
actually, I did so yesterday, as per the client's request, we used Skype for business. It didn't go all that well, but we used it.
Sure. Well, Zoom had the issues with some securities, and then everybody kind of went nuts and said, "Oh, we can't trust Zoom," and then they went back to what was maybe comfortable for them internally. So Microsoft Teams was one of those things where I thought I was given. They said we can't use Zoom, but we can use our Microsoft Teams, and I found myself like going back almost 2 years. It's like, so I can't do what I'm used to doing in Zoom. And then the announcement, Barbara, our great colleague, virtual hero, virtual space
breakout
hero.
rooms, right?
Yeah, she is following this closely, and these technologies are catching up with each other and saying, yes, simple things like breakout rooms, simple things like being able to, again, include everybody in a larger group, but also break people out into smaller interactive groups, is something that we just take for granted, and yet it doesn't exist in a lot of platforms. So knowing your platforms, knowing the ability of your clients, their openness to adapt to new technologies. This morning at 5 a.m. I did a call with the platform we're hosting the CETA USA conference on, and again, it was, I learned, even though I've explored that so well, again, I learned more about it, and I'm excited to use it. But I'm always cognizant of the fact that I might be excited to use it, but culturally somebody else might. It just might drive them bananas. So trying to keep it simple and trying to not out tech the client is also another way of being included in that. So yeah,
I fully agree. And whenever a client comes to us and says, "Well, I'd rather use this platform than that," I catch myself and find, I don't want to use that platform. I'd rather use the other platform. And then they justify that with, well, firewalls or corporate policy, and I get that. So I think it calls on us, on practitioners like you and me, to be flexible with the resources that we have available in those situations. So not every time will we have a fancy shiny thing like the one we're using now for a live broadcast that allows us to insert comments and have a scrolling banner down at the bottom there. Not every time are we going to be able to do that. So it's, I think, critically important for a successful trainer, coach, practitioner in our industry, in, let's say, adult education. It's important that we are flexible enough to provide our content and our input, our performance in ways that maximize the potential available. And sometimes it'll be multi-feature. Sometimes it will be fairly virtual.
Rudimentary. Well, yeah, what I found myself doing, and I caught myself, hopefully I caught myself early enough not to give it up, but for the clients recently, when I was asked to go back to, or not go back, but adjust to one of those platforms, I found myself thinking more condescendingly and wanting to say and wanting to prove to, oh, this is so terrible. Why can't these people catch up? And I thought, well, hang on, this person might be comfortable in using this platform, and this is their home. This is how they run their business, and they've run their international team on. And so you've got to be respectful of that. And it should have been, it behooves me to have been keeping in touch with that platform so that I know how to use it effectively. Now and so I did find myself, that's one of the things we try and stop ourselves culturally, is not to look down and and think of yourself superior to another culture just because you don't agree with how and what they operate in.
Exactly.
So I hope I caught myself, because I've been guilty of that in the past. Don't worry, and I'll probably be guilty about in the future. But I want to really encourage everybody to stop and think how you're communicating your openness. Your openness. We're people that teach openness. And yet, if we're actually being discriminatory in terms of the technology, then we're just going against our very tenets.
Or even that our counterparts, our minds may not be as open as we are at that point. And in the beginning, they may feel a reluctance to meet us at the same openness level. I had this experience just last week with a remote training delivered in 3 sessions. And the gentleman is Moroccan, and he will be moving from the United States to Central Europe. So I think he's already moved. It's September 2nd. So I think he may have already moved over. And we used WebEx because this company didn't allow Zoom. So, okay, there we go. WebEx, we'll make it work. So that was my first internal condescension. I think that's how you say it. And then he came on the call, and there was no camera. There was only audio for him. My camera was on, his was not. And I recognized that he didn't want to come on camera, which immediately threw me for a loop, because they're like, oh, this is going to be tough. We're going to have 3 sessions without video. That's going to be hard. So it took me maybe 10 minutes of rapport building just by voice conversation, that he felt comfortable to break down that barrier or lower that wall. And he's, you know what, maybe it's better to turn the camera on. And from there on out, it was great. However, it took my respect for his reluctancy, or reluctance. Dang, today English words are not coming out the way I want them. This is the curse of using a second language for this. So he didn't feel comfortable at first, and I think I don't want to pep myself on the shoulder too hard, but I was kind of proud of myself that I was able to allow him to lower his guard. Well, thank you, Patricia. So now that I don't have to pat my back, Patricia is doing that. Thank you. Yeah, Moroccans can be very private, and this gentleman was very private. And you know what? By the end of the first session, he showed me a picture of his whole family, and that was when I knew this is working. This is going to work. We're building a relationship despite the digital divide, and it was a great training. But to your point, we need to be flexible enough and cognizant enough of other people's restrictions, whether they be culturally or technologically or their comfort level with this form of delivery. That's requires a little bit of experience, maybe, or empathy, emotional intelligence, you name it.
All of the above. All of the above. Absolutely. Very cool. Very good. Well, that's great. This may be a topic that gets wheeled out a lot of times in different ways, and our approach is only one. So we would love to hear from your expertise, your experience, and your insights into what has worked, what has not worked before, and anything that you can guide the rest of the community in, that would be great. We're very open to it because, you know, I've still got a lot to learn, even though I hope I can learn a lot of it on these. This would be fun.
I thought you knew it all.
No, I don't. No. Well, yeah, I like to tell myself I do, but you know, that's always a hiding to nothing. you get caught out.
And then your kids tell you how wrong you are. Yep.
That's right.
That's a very humble. So this is probably one of the best tools to overcome your own cockiness is to have kids. They will humble you. That's what I learned.
Now we'll bring you down to it. That's for sure.
Yes. All right, that's it for today. Two Chaps, many cultures. Looking for your comments. Appreciate all the comments that came in and the likes and the hearts and whatever else you do to let us know that you're with us. And let me remove that banner so that arrow has its full effect. Come on. Let's bring that arrow back. Come on, Brett. How do you do that? There you go.
And subscribe. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Absolutely.
Yeah. See you tomorrow.
All right. Bye, guys.